Hello friends, summer's coming to an end, the weather's getting cooler, gardening season's over, not having to do much in the yard, so I'm ready to get started on some of the projects that I bought over the summer, and I'm real anxious to get started on this one. This is a Perfection 1527 kerosene heater. It's probably 100 years old, and it's one of the most desirable of the Perfection heaters. This was an early model of the Firelight line, and it's a little bit smaller than the more modern glass heaters like this one. First thing you notice is it's got this oval Perfection logo on the glass that the newer ones don't have. Matter of fact, let me show you what one of the more modern ones look like. And of course, I'm not sure if you can tell it in the video, but the diameter of the glass is slightly larger than this one. And of course, this one has a flame emblem on it instead of the oval Perfection emblem on it. This has more of the Art Deco look of the 30s and 40s as opposed to this one. It's got the feet on it. But this is the one that most people want. You don't see them very often, and when you do, they're generally pretty expensive. I got this one at a relatively good deal, and although it looks pretty rough right now, I think I'm going to be able to clean it up and make it look good. Let me show you one I restored last year. This is a model 525, which is from about the same era. And this one was in worse shape than this one when I got it. And of course, you can see how it looks now. I'm going to go all black with this one. I think it's going to look really nice. I'm going to show you how I do it. Stick around. Here are a few of the heaters that I picked up over the summer to restore. I was real excited to find this model. It's a 510, and it's quite a bit smaller than the others. I don't think I've actually ever seen another one like that one. And then of course that's one of the modern Firelight models. And of course back here is a model 730. You can see it's got the rectangular grill there on the front of it. And of course there's another Firelight model. That's actually a 750. And of course if you're familiar with Perfection heaters, you know that the 750 was a porcelain brown and white, but someone has painted this one black. I'm not sure why, unless the porcelain was deteriorated, but it looks like the nickel trim is still in good shape. But some of these are just parts and pieces that I've used where I've scavenged parts to restore others. Whenever I see the fuel tanks, I try to buy those because you know, sometimes the pieces are bent, or they have holes in them, or it's always good to have extras on hand. But I hope to work on these over the winter and get several of these restored. Well, the first thing I need to do is get this thing taken apart so I can start sandblasting the pieces. Now, there's two rods that run from the top to the bottom that holds the top piece together. And of course, this opens up like this to allow you to take the fuel tank out. And there's two nuts on the bottom here. I'm going to soak those down with WD-40. Hopefully I can get those out without breaking them. There were two small nuts with bolts here holding the slats in place. They were so rusted that I wound up just having to cut them off. So this top should come off now. So let's see what we've got here, if I don't break it. Alright. Do not want to break this glass, because that's really where all the value is. And then of course all these pieces are just pressed together. There's the ring, there's the Pyrex globe. These are the two pieces that there was screws in the bottom of this that was rusted. I guess after 100 years they weren't going to come loose. And then there's also two screws here at the top, which I don't think I'm going to be able to get those out either, so I may have to wind up cutting those. But I'm well along. I'm going to continue working on this, try to get these pieces apart. I'm going to take the pin out of this piece. All right, so we've got this apart. I think all of that will fit in my sandblaster, so I think I can leave all of this intact. I've got this piece. I've still got to take these pieces apart. Well, I've got it fully disassembled now, at least as far as I need to take it to restore all the pieces. The last thing I need to do is get this part off of the fuel tank, and the best thing I found to remove that is a strap wrench like this. I'm hoping that after having soaked in WD-40 for several hours, it's gonna, oh yeah, it's gonna come off pretty easy. Alright, let's see if I can get it. Alright, I think that's going to come off there now. Alright, that's the last piece to be disassembled. There's the remains of an old wick. I'll take that off. Looks like there's still some old kerosene in this tank, which is probably a good sign because I don't see anything leaking, so I'm thinking that the tank is in good shape. I'll sandblast it as well and get it good and clean. All right, next step, sandblasting. I've got all the pieces sandblasted now and everything turned out pretty good. Let me give you a closer look. I've just got to wipe all these pieces down and I'll be ready to start painting. I'm going to scrub this globe really well. It's got 100 years of soot and dirt on it. Of course, if you're interested in buying one of these heaters, you want to make sure that the globe doesn't have any cracks in it. In my opinion, if the globe is broke, I wouldn't even buy it no matter how cheap it is, because if you have to buy one of these globes, it's going to cost more than what you can get a whole heater for. It's not perfectly clean. I'm going to have to work on it a little bit more, but it looks a whole lot better than it did. I'm using a high temperature 2000 degree primer. This black paint that I'm using is rated at 1200 degrees, so it should hold up. These heaters generally run consistently around 500 degrees. I've got all the pieces painted now and everything's looking really good. Now I've got to put the paint through the curing process. This particular paint calls for baking it at 250 degrees for 30 minutes, letting it cool, baking it for 400 degrees and then letting it cool, and then baking it at 600 degrees and letting it cool. And of course it has to go through that curing process to obtain the claim of 1200 degrees like this paint does. I've used 900 degree paint to some success, and it really depends on, I think, how good a shape the metal's in. I think in my experience, the more pitted the metal is, the less your paint is going to hold up under heat. So that's one of the reasons I went with all black on this one, is so I could use this 1200 degree paint to make sure that I didn't have any problems. But I'm going to get started on that. Stick around. The base doesn't get hot, but when you heat this paint, the sheen changes slightly, and I want all the pieces to match, so I'm going to bake all of them. Alright, I've got all my pieces baked now, and I'm in the process of putting it back together. I just put on these uprights, and I've just got them finger tight right now, so they'll still move a little at the top. So I'm ready to put the ring and the globe on. Of course, the logo goes towards the latch. All right, that looks good. And then for the chimney, and there's a notch at the back of this chimney that matches up to a little piece here on the glass. All right, that looks about where it needs to be. And of course this will go here. We're getting really close now. I got it all back together. It looks good. All I've got to do is put a wick on the font and we'll be ready to fire it up. All right, I've got the wick in. It's been soaking in kerosene for a while. Let's light her up. And of course, normally I light them outside so that initial little puff of smoke don't get inside, but I'm gonna go ahead and light it inside this time. All right. Of course, you'll notice, if you're not familiar with these heaters, once you close the chimney, it starts burning a whole lot more even. Looks like it's going to do good. I appreciate you watching. Also appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel and watch my other videos. Until next time, so long.